The morning mist clung to the grounds of Windsor Castle like a silk veil, creating an ethereal atmosphere that seemed to whisper of centuries past. Detective Chief Inspector Sarah Matthews adjusted her radio earpiece as she conducted her final security sweep before the day's royal engagements. At 42, she had served in the Royal Protection Unit for nearly 15 years, her sharp instincts and unwavering dedication earning her the respect of both colleagues and the royal family themselves. Sarah's keen eyes scanned the ancient stone corridors as she made her rounds. The castle felt different today, though. She couldn't quite place why. Perhaps it was the unusual energy emanating from the staff quarters, or the way the household servants seemed to move with an extra spring in their step. Whatever it was, her trained intuition told her to remain particularly vigilant. Princess Charlotte, now 8 years old, had always been a spirited child with an infectious laugh and boundless curiosity. Unlike her older brother George, who carried himself with the natural gravitas expected of a future king, Charlotte possessed a wild imagination and an adventurous spirit that often led her into harmless mischief. The young princess had developed a particular fondness for exploring the castle's hidden passages and forgotten rooms, much to the concern of her security detail. On this crisp October morning, Charlotte had awakened with an unusual sense of restlessness. She had been experiencing vivid dreams for several nights, dreams that featured her step-grandmother Camilla in various scenarios that seemed both familiar and strange. In these nocturnal visions, Camilla appeared to be trying to communicate something important, though the message remained frustratingly unclear upon waking. The princess sat at her breakfast table in the family's private dining room, pushing scrambled eggs around her plate while her mind wandered to the recurring dreams. Her governess, Miss Elizabeth Hartwell, noticed the child's distracted state but attributed it to the typical restlessness of an energetic 8-year-old confined indoors on a beautiful autumn day. "Your Royal Highness seems rather thoughtful this morning," Miss Hartwell observed gently, her voice carrying the refined accent that had been carefully cultivated through years of service to aristocratic families. "Perhaps a walk in the gardens would help clear your mind?" Charlotte looked up from her untouched breakfast, her bright blue eyes reflecting a maturity that sometimes surprised the adults around her.
"Miss Hartwell, do you think dreams can mean something important?"
"Like, really important?" The governess paused, considering her response carefully. She had been educated at Cambridge and possessed a deep understanding of child psychology, but questions about dreams and their significance always required delicate handling, especially when posed by a member of the royal family. "Dreams can certainly feel very real and meaningful to us," she replied diplomatically. "Many great thinkers throughout history have found inspiration in their dreams." "What has prompted this question, if I may ask?" Charlotte hesitated, her small fingers fidgeting with the corner of her napkin. "I keep dreaming about Grandmama Camilla. She's trying to tell me something, but I can't understand what it is, and she seems worried about something." Miss Hartwell's eyebrows rose slightly. The relationship between Charlotte and the Queen Consort had always been warm and affectionate, with Camilla often playing the role of doting grandmother despite the complexities of her position within the family. However, the child's dream suggested a deeper connection that perhaps warranted attention. "Have you spoken to your parents about these dreams?" the governess inquired. "Papa has been very busy with his royal duties, and Mama is preparing for her trip to Scotland next week," Charlotte replied, her voice carrying a hint of disappointment. "I don't want to bother them with something that might just be silly dreams." Meanwhile, in another wing of the castle, Sarah Matthews was reviewing the day's security protocols with her team. The royal family's schedule appeared routine. King Charles would be meeting with Commonwealth representatives in the afternoon, Catherine would be attending a charity luncheon in London, and the children would remain at Windsor for their lessons with various tutors. However, Sarah had learned over the years that even the most carefully planned royal days could take unexpected turns. The princess, in particular, had a talent for finding adventure in the most mundane circumstances. Just last month, Charlotte had discovered a hidden door behind a tapestry in the library, leading to a narrow servant's staircase that hadn't been used in decades. The incident had resulted in a castle-wide search when the princess briefly went missing during her afternoon lessons. As Sarah completed her morning briefing, she received word that the Queen Consort would be arriving unexpectedly at Windsor within the hour. Camilla's visit hadn't been scheduled, and the sudden change in plans immediately put the security team on heightened alert. Unscheduled arrivals always created logistical challenges and required rapid adjustments to existing security arrangements. Ma'am, we've just received confirmation that Her Majesty the Queen Consort's motorcade will arrive at the main entrance in approximately 45 minutes, Sergeant Michael Thompson announced as he approached Sarah with a tablet displaying the updated security grid. Sarah frowned slightly as she processed this information. Camilla was known for her punctuality and rarely deviated from scheduled appointments without significant reason. The unexpected visit suggested either an urgent matter requiring immediate attention or a spontaneous decision driven by personal concerns. "Have we received any indication of the nature of this visit?" Sarah asked, her professional instincts already calculating the necessary security adjustments. "Negative, ma'am. The message came directly from Clarence House with minimal details. We're treating it as a family visit pending further information." Sarah nodded, her mind already working through the implications. Family visits, while generally less formal than official engagements, still required careful coordination to ensure the safety and privacy of all parties involved. The presence of the children at Windsor added another layer of complexity to the security arrangements. Back in the family quarters, Charlotte had finished her breakfast and was preparing for her morning mathematics lesson with Professor Davidson, a distinguished scholar who had been tutoring royal children for over 2 decades. However, her mind remained preoccupied with the persistent dreams and a growing sense that something significant was about to occur. As she walked through the corridor toward the study room, Charlotte passed a large window overlooking the castle's main approach. In the distance, she could see the familiar sight of a royal motorcade making its way up the tree-lined drive. The black vehicles moved with the measured precision characteristic of royal transportation, their presence both reassuring and slightly ominous against the autumn landscape. Something about the approaching motorcade triggered an immediate and inexplicable reaction in the young princess. Her heart began racing, and a cold sensation spread through her chest. The dreams from the previous nights suddenly felt overwhelmingly real, and Camilla's worried expression from those nocturnal visions seemed to materialize before her eyes. "Grandmama Camilla," she whispered to herself, the words seeming to carry more weight than a simple acknowledgement of recognition. Charlotte's breathing became shallow and rapid as an intense wave of panic washed over her. The corridor around her seemed to blur and shift, and she felt as though she was falling into one of her dreams while fully awake. The rational part of her mind knew that her step-grandmother's arrival should be a cause for joy, not alarm, but her emotional response defied logical explanation. "Grandmama Camilla! Grandmama Camilla!" she began repeating, her voice growing more urgent with each iteration. The name seemed to be the only anchor she could find in the sudden storm of confusion and fear that had overtaken her young mind. Miss Hartwell, who had been following at a discreet distance, immediately noticed the change in Charlotte's demeanor. The governess quickened her pace, her training in child psychology alerting her to the signs of a developing panic attack. However, before she could reach the princess, Charlotte's distress escalated dramatically. "Grandmama Camilla! Grandmama Camilla!" Charlotte called out, her voice echoing through the stone corridor with increasing desperation. She pressed her small hands against the window glass, her eyes wide with a terror that seemed far beyond her years. Sarah Matthews, who had been conducting a routine patrol 2 corridors away, heard the princess's cries through her radio earpiece. The urgency in Charlotte's voice immediately triggered her protective instincts, and she abandoned all standard protocol as she sprinted toward the source of the distress. Training had taught Sarah to follow established procedures in all situations, to maintain professional distance while ensuring royal safety, and to coordinate with other team members before taking independent action. However, the raw fear in Charlotte's voice overrode years of conditioning, transforming her from a security professional into a protective figure responding to a child in crisis. As Sarah rounded the corner, she saw Charlotte pressed against the window, her small body trembling as she continued to repeat Camilla's name with increasing panic. Miss Hartwell stood nearby, clearly struggling to find an appropriate way to approach and comfort the distressed princess, without overstepping her bounds as an employee of the royal household. Without hesitation, Sarah knelt beside Charlotte, placing a gentle but firm hand on the child's shoulder. "Your Royal Highness, I'm here. You're safe. Can you tell me what's frightening you?" Charlotte turned towards Sarah, her blue eyes filled with tears and confusion. She's in trouble. Grandmama Camilla is in terrible trouble, and no one believes me. I can see it, but I don't understand what it means. Sarah's protective instincts fully activated as she gathered the trembling princess into her arms. Protocol be damned. In that moment, she was no longer Detective Chief Inspector Matthews following royal protection procedures. She was simply an adult responding to a terrified child who needed comfort and security. "It's going to be all right," Sarah murmured softly, her voice carrying the same tone she had once used to comfort her own daughter during childhood nightmares. "We're going to figure this out together. You're not alone." Charlotte clung to Sarah with desperate intensity, her small fingers gripping the detective's jacket as if holding on to a lifeline. The repetition of Camilla's name continued, but gradually became less frantic as Sarah's presence provided a measure of stability in the chaos of her emotional storm. Miss Hartwell watched the scene unfold with a mixture of relief and concern. While Sarah's intervention had clearly helped to calm Charlotte, the breach of protocol was significant and would likely have consequences. Royal protection officers were trained to maintain professional boundaries at all times, and physical contact with members of the royal family was strictly regulated, except in cases of immediate physical danger. However, as the governess observed Charlotte's response to Sarah's comfort, she found herself grateful that someone had been willing to prioritize the child's emotional needs over institutional regulations. The princess's panic attack had been genuine and severe, requiring immediate intervention that transcended normal boundaries. "Perhaps we should move to a more private location," Miss Hartwell suggested quietly, mindful of the public nature of the corridor and the possibility that other staff members might observe the unusual scene. Sarah nodded, carefully helping Charlotte to her feet while maintaining the physical contact that seemed to provide the child with essential emotional grounding. Together they made their way to a nearby sitting room, a cozy space decorated with family photographs and comfortable furniture that felt more intimate than the formal reception areas elsewhere in the castle. Once settled in the sitting room, Sarah continued to hold Charlotte, allowing the princess to gradually regain her composure while processing the intensity of her emotional experience. The detective's radio crackled softly with routine communications from her team, but she ignored the incoming messages, focusing entirely on the distressed child in her care. "Can you tell me more about what you're feeling?" Sarah asked gently, her voice stripped of its usual professional authority, and filled instead with genuine concern and warmth. Charlotte took several deep breaths before attempting to explain her inexplicable terror. "In my dreams, Grandmama Camilla keeps trying to warn me about something. She looks scared and sad, and she keeps pointing to something behind her, but I can never see what it is. When I saw her car coming up the drive, all of those feelings from the dreams came flooding back, and I knew something terrible was going to happen." Sarah listened carefully to Charlotte's description, her analytical mind working to distinguish between childhood imagination and potential legitimate concerns. While she didn't believe in prophetic dreams, her experience had taught her that children often possessed an intuitive understanding of family dynamics and hidden tensions that adults missed or chose to ignore. "Dreams can feel very real and frightening," Sarah acknowledged. "But I want you to know that your step-grandmother is surrounded by excellent security, just like you are. She's protected and safe." "But what if the danger isn't from outside?" Charlotte asked, her question displaying a perceptiveness that caught both adults off guard. "What if it's from something or someone she trusts?" The sophistication of Charlotte's concern sent a chill through Sarah's professional consciousness. 8-year-old children didn't typically consider the complexities of insider threats or betrayal from trusted sources, unless they had been exposed to conversations or situations beyond their years. Miss Hartwell shifted uncomfortably in her chair, clearly struggling with the implications of Charlotte's statements. As an employee of the royal household, she was bound by strict confidentiality agreements and professional expectations that discouraged speculation about internal family dynamics or security matters. Before anyone could respond to Charlotte's unsettling question, Sarah's radio erupted with urgent communications from the main security checkpoint. The Queen Consort's motorcade had arrived at the castle's main entrance, and standard protocols were being implemented for her reception and escort to the family quarters. "All units, Her Majesty the Queen Consort has arrived and is being escorted to the Blue Drawing Room for an informal meeting with their Majesties," announced the voice of Sergeant Thompson through Sarah's earpiece. Charlotte's grip on Sarah's hand tightened immediately upon hearing the announcement. She's here. Grandmama Camilla is here, and something terrible is going to happen. I can feel it. Sarah found herself facing an unprecedented dilemma. Her professional responsibilities required her to maintain her assigned security position and follow established protocols for royal visits. However, Charlotte's genuine distress and her own instinctive protective response made it difficult to simply return to routine duties while leaving the child in such a vulnerable emotional state. Your Royal Highness, would you like to remain here with Miss Hartwell while I coordinate with my team to ensure your step-grandmother's safety? Sarah suggested, attempting to balance her professional obligations with her concern for Charlotte. No! Charlotte exclaimed, her panic immediately returning. Please don't leave me. Something bad is going to happen, and I need you to help protect her. You're the only one who believes that I might be right. The princess's desperate plea shattered the last vestiges of Sarah's professional detachment. In 15 years of royal protection service, she had never encountered a situation that so clearly demanded a choice between protocol compliance and human compassion. Every instinct told her that Charlotte's distress was genuine, and that dismissing the child's concerns would be both cruel and potentially dangerous. I'm not going anywhere, Sarah promised, pulling Charlotte closer, in a gesture that she knew would be scrutinized and likely criticized by her superiors. We'll figure this out together, and we'll make sure everyone stays safe. Miss Hartwell watched this exchange with growing appreciation for Sarah's character and growing concern about the professional consequences that would inevitably follow. The governess had witnessed many interactions between royal family members and their security details over the years, but she had never seen a protection officer so completely abandon protocol in response to a family member's emotional needs. As the three of them sat in the cozy sitting room, the sounds of the castle's daily operations continued around them. Staff members moved through the corridors with their usual efficiency. Groundskeepers tended to the autumn gardens visible through the windows, and the royal household maintained its centuries-old rhythm of service and tradition. However, within the intimate confines of their temporary sanctuary, a different kind of drama was unfolding. A young princess grappled with inexplicable fears and premonitions, a dedicated governess struggled to balance her professional obligations with her genuine care for her charge, and a seasoned protection officer found herself choosing human connection over institutional expectations. The arrival of the Queen Consort had set in motion a chain of events that would challenge everyone's understanding of duty, loyalty, and the complex emotional dynamics that existed beneath the formal surface of royal life. Charlotte's panic attack and her desperate repetition of Camilla's name had revealed fractures in the carefully maintained facade of royal perfection, exposing the very human fears and vulnerabilities that protocol was designed to conceal. As Sarah held the trembling princess and listened to the continuing radio communications about Camilla's arrival and movement through the castle, she found herself wondering whether Charlotte's inexplicable terror might be based on something more substantial than childhood imagination. The detective's analytical mind began to process the available information with new perspective, considering possibilities that extended far beyond standard security concerns. The afternoon sun streamed through the sitting room windows, casting long shadows across the Persian rug and illuminating the dust motes that danced in the warm air. The peaceful domestic scene contrasted sharply with the emotional intensity of the moment, creating a surreal atmosphere where royal protocol collided with genuine human need. The blue drawing room at Windsor Castle had witnessed countless diplomatic meetings, family gatherings, and historic conversations over the centuries. Its pale blue silk wallpaper and antique furnishings created an atmosphere of refined elegance that seemed to absorb the weight of royal tradition. On this particular afternoon, however, the room held an unusual tension, as Camilla, Queen Consort, sat across from King Charles, her normally composed demeanor betraying subtle signs of distress. Charles studied his wife's face with the keen perception that comes from decades of marriage and shared public service. At 75, he had learned to read the subtle nuances of expression and body language that revealed inner turmoil beneath royal composure. Something had clearly prompted Camilla's unexpected visit to Windsor, something significant enough to disrupt her carefully planned schedule. "My dear, you seem rather troubled," Charles observed gently, setting aside the briefing papers he had been reviewing when she arrived. "Your message mentioned an urgent family matter, but you provided few details." Camilla's hands fidgeted with her pearl necklace, a conscious gesture that Charles recognized as a sign of deep anxiety. Her usually perfectly styled silver hair showed signs of hasty preparation, and her makeup couldn't quite conceal the shadows under her eyes that suggested several nights of poor sleep. "Charles, I've been experiencing the most peculiar dreams recently," she began, her voice carrying an uncertainty that was foreign to her usual confident tone. "Dreams about Charlotte that feel far too vivid and specific to dismiss as mere nocturnal imaginings." The king's eyebrows rose slightly. While he respected his wife's intelligence and intuition, discussions of prophetic dreams were not typical topics of royal conversation. However, the genuine distress in Camilla's voice compelled him to listen with an open mind. "What sort of dreams?" he asked, leaning forward with increased attention. Camilla took a deep breath before continuing. "In these dreams, Charlotte appears to be trying to communicate with me about some kind of danger. She seems frightened and keeps pointing behind me, as if warning about a threat I can't see. The child looks older than her current age, perhaps 10 or 11, and she speaks with an urgency that feels absolutely real." Charles remained silent, allowing his wife to continue her unusual account without interruption. His own relationship with Charlotte had always been warm and affectionate, characterized by the special bond that often exists between grandparents and grandchildren. The idea that the young princess might be experiencing distress of any kind immediately engaged his protective instincts. "The most disturbing aspect," Camilla continued, "is that in every dream Charlotte keeps repeating my name with increasing desperation, as if she's trying to wake me up or warn me about something terrible that's about to happen. When I wake up, I can still hear her voice echoing in my mind, and I feel this overwhelming compulsion to come and check on her immediately." Meanwhile, in the sitting room where Sarah still held the trembling princess, Charlotte had gradually begun to calm down, though she remained pressed close to the detective's side. Miss Hartwell had quietly excused herself to inform the household staff that Charlotte's lessons would be delayed, leaving Sarah and the princess alone to continue their conversation. "The dreams have been coming every night for the past week," Charlotte explained to Sarah, her voice still shaky but more coherent than before. "At first, I thought they were just regular dreams, but they feel different. They feel like memories of something that hasn't happened yet." Sarah's analytical mind struggled to process the child's description. While she didn't believe in supernatural phenomena, her training had taught her to consider all possibilities when assessing potential threats. Charlotte's emotional response to Camilla's arrival had been genuine and intense, suggesting that whatever was happening went beyond normal childhood fears. "Can you describe what happens in these dreams?" Sarah asked gently, maintaining her protective hold on Charlotte while engaging her rational investigative instincts. "I'm older in the dreams, maybe 10 or 11, Charlotte replied, unconsciously echoing Camilla's description to her grandfather. "I can see Grandmama Camilla, but she looks scared and confused. There are people around her, people in dark clothes who seem friendly but feel wrong somehow. I keep trying to tell her to be careful, but she can't hear me properly." Sarah's professional alarm bells began ringing as Charlotte's account suggested scenarios involving potential threats from individuals who had gained the target's trust. Insider threats represented one of the most challenging aspects of royal protection, as they required security personnel to maintain vigilance against the very people who were supposed to be providing support and assistance. "These people in dark clothes," Sarah prompted carefully. "Can you remember any specific details about them, what they looked like, or what they were doing?" Charlotte closed her eyes, concentrating on the dream images that remained frustratingly vague despite their emotional intensity. They wore suits like the people who work at the castle, but their faces were blurry. One of them kept offering Grandmama Camilla something to drink, and I felt this terrible fear that she shouldn't accept it. But every time I tried to warn her, my voice got quieter instead of louder. The specificity of Charlotte's description sent a chill through Sarah's consciousness. While dreams were notoriously unreliable as sources of factual information, the child's account contained elements that aligned with classic assassination scenarios, involving trusted insiders and poisoning attempts. The detective's rational mind rejected the possibility of prophetic dreams, but her professional instincts recognized patterns that warranted investigation. Back in the blue drawing room, Charles had listened to Camilla's account with growing concern. While he remained skeptical about the supernatural implications of shared dreams, The emotional distress exhibited by both his wife and granddaughter suggested underlying psychological dynamics that required attention. "Have you spoken with Catherine about Charlotte's recent behavior?" Charles asked. "Perhaps there have been signs of distress that we haven't recognized." "I called Catherine this morning before coming here," Camilla replied. "She mentioned that Charlotte has been somewhat withdrawn lately and has been asking unusual questions about dreams and their meanings. The child has also been requesting more stories about family history, particularly stories about times when family members faced danger or challenges." Charles nodded thoughtfully. His granddaughter's interest in family history was not unusual. Royal children were naturally curious about their heritage and the responsibilities they would someday inherit. However, the timing of this interest, combined with the shared dreams reported by both Charlotte and Camilla, suggested a more complex psychological dynamic at work. "Perhaps we should arrange for Charlotte to speak with Dr. Morrison," Charles suggested, referring to the family's trusted physician and counselor who had worked with royal children for many years. "While I don't believe in prophetic dreams, it's possible that Charlotte is processing some kind of anxiety or concern through her subconscious mind." Camilla agreed with this suggestion, but felt compelled to voice her deeper fears. "Charles, what if the dreams aren't prophetic, but are instead reflecting some real danger that our subconscious minds have detected? What if Charlotte's young mind is picking up on threats or tensions that our adult consciousness has rationalized away?" This possibility resonated with Charles's own understanding of children's remarkable ability to perceive emotional undercurrents and hidden tensions that adults often missed. Charlotte had always been an exceptionally perceptive child, often making observations about people and situations that revealed insights beyond her years. "If that's the case," Charles said slowly, "then perhaps we should treat Charlotte's concerns seriously while maintaining appropriate skepticism about their literal accuracy. We could review our current security arrangements and look for any potential vulnerabilities or personnel issues that might warrant attention." As they continued their conversation, neither Charles nor Camilla was aware that in another part of the castle, their granddaughter was sharing remarkably similar concerns with a protection officer who had chosen to prioritize the child's emotional needs over institutional protocol. Sarah found herself facing an increasingly complex situation, as Charlotte's account continued to reveal details that aligned with legitimate security concerns. While the detective's rational mind rejected supernatural explanations, her professional instincts recognized the possibility that the child might have observed or overheard something that her conscious mind hadn't fully processed. "Charlotte, have you noticed anything unusual about the people who work at the castle recently?" Sarah asked, careful to frame her question in terms that wouldn't frighten the child further. "Any new faces or changes in routine that might have caught your attention?" Charlotte considered this question carefully, her young mind working to separate recent observations from dream imagery. "There have been some new people in the kitchen staff recently, and one of them always seems to be watching when the family has meals. He smiles a lot, but his eyes don't smile the same way." This observation immediately caught Sarah's professional attention. Kitchen staff had access to food and beverages consumed by the royal family, and their positions required extensive background checks and ongoing security monitoring. Any individual who raised suspicions, even from a child's perspective, warranted investigation. "Can you describe this person?" Sarah asked, her protective instincts now fully engaged. "He's tall with dark hair, and he always wears a white coat like the other kitchen workers. But he holds himself differently, like he's pretending to belong there. And yesterday, when I walked past the kitchen, I saw him putting something small into his pocket when he thought no one was looking." Sarah's mental alarm system reached full alert as Charlotte's description painted a picture of potential infiltration by someone with suspicious behavior and possible access to food preparation areas. While children's observations could be unreliable, the specific details suggested legitimate grounds for investigation. "Charlotte, this is very important information," Sarah said, maintaining her calm demeanor while internally calculating the immediate security implications. "I'm going to need to share what you've told me with my team so we can make sure everyone stays safe. Will you stay with me while you do that?" Charlotte asked, her grip on Sarah's hand tightening. "I'm still scared about Grandmama Camilla, and I feel safer when you're here." Sarah nodded, recognizing that Charlotte's emotional needs remained paramount despite the potential security concerns that required investigation. "I'll stay with you, and we'll make sure your step-grandmother is protected." As Sarah activated her radio to communicate with her team, she prepared to report information that would likely be met with skepticism, but that her professional instincts told her warranted immediate attention. The combination of Charlotte's emotional distress, her specific observations about suspicious staff behavior, and the timing of Camilla's unexpected visit created a pattern that demanded investigation regardless of its supernatural origins. "Control, this is Matthews," Sarah spoke quietly into her radio. "I need to report potential security concerns regarding kitchen staff and request immediate verification of recent personnel additions to food service areas." The response crackled through her earpiece with professional efficiency. "Copy, Matthews. Please provide details for immediate follow-up." Sarah glanced at Charlotte, who was listening intently to the radio communication with eyes that reflected both fear and hope. The princess seemed to understand that her observations were being taken seriously, which appeared to provide some measure of comfort despite her ongoing anxiety about Camilla's safety. "I need to speak with Sergeant Thompson privately," Sarah continued. "Please arrange for him to meet me in the East Wing sitting room within the next 10 minutes. Acknowledged. Thompson is being notified now." As they waited for Sergeant Thompson's arrival, Sarah continued to hold Charlotte, recognizing that the child's emotional state remained fragile despite the calming effect of having her concerns validated. The detective found herself in the unprecedented position of serving simultaneously as a security professional investigating potential threats and as a surrogate parental figure providing comfort to a frightened child. "You're being very brave," Sarah told Charlotte softly. "Sharing your observations and concerns, even when they might seem strange to other people, shows real courage." Charlotte looked up at Sarah with eyes that seemed much older than her. 8 years. "Do you think the dreams mean something important? Not like magic, but maybe like my mind figured out something that I didn't realize I knew." Sarah was struck by the sophistication of Charlotte's question, which demonstrated an understanding of subconscious processing that most adults struggled to articulate. "I think your mind is very good at noticing details and patterns that other people might miss. Dreams can sometimes be how our brain sorts through things we've observed but haven't fully understood yet." This explanation seemed to provide Charlotte with a framework for understanding her experience that felt both validating and rational. The princess nodded thoughtfully, her breathing becoming more regular as the immediate panic subsided into manageable concern. "So, maybe my dreams about Grandmama Camilla are my mind's way of warning about real danger, even if the dreams themselves aren't exactly like what will really happen." "That's a very intelligent way to think about it," Sarah confirmed. "And that's why we're going to take your concerns seriously and make sure everyone stays safe." When Sergeant Thompson arrived at the sitting room, his expression reflected the professional concern appropriate for an unscheduled security briefing. However, his demeanor shifted noticeably when he saw Sarah holding Princess Charlotte in a manner that clearly violated established protocol for royal protection officers. "Ma'am," Thompson began carefully, "I understand you have security concerns to report." Sarah recognized the diplomatic phrasing that indicated Thompson's awareness of her protocol violations, but his willingness to prioritize operational concerns over disciplinary issues. "Sergeant, Princess Charlotte has made observations about recent kitchen staff additions that warrant immediate investigation. We need to verify the background and behavior of all personnel with food service access." Thompson's professional focus immediately engaged as he processed the implications of potential insider threats involving food service areas. While he clearly had questions about the circumstances that had led to this information being obtained, his security instincts recognized the critical importance of following up on any concerns related to access and opportunity for potential harm. "Can you provide specific details about the individual or individuals in question?" Thompson asked, directing his attention to Charlotte with appropriate deference, but obvious professional interest. Charlotte looked to Sarah for encouragement before describing her observations about the suspicious kitchen worker. As she provided details about the man's appearance and behavior, both Thompson and Sarah took careful note of the specific information that could be used to identify and investigate the individual in question. "We'll initiate immediate background verification and surveillance of all recent kitchen staff additions," Thompson assured them. "Additionally, I recommend implementing enhanced security protocols for all food and beverage service until we can confirm the absence of any threats." Sarah nodded her agreement with these measures while maintaining her protective hold on Charlotte. The princess had listened to the security discussion with mature attention, clearly understanding that her observations had triggered important safety procedures. "What about Grandmama Camilla?" Charlotte asked. "Is she safe right now?" Thompson consulted his radio communications log before responding. "Her Majesty the Queen Consort is currently in the blue drawing room with His Majesty the King. The area is secure, and there are no planned food or beverage services for that location this afternoon." This information provided Charlotte with some immediate reassurance, though her overall anxiety about Camilla's safety remained elevated. The princess seemed to understand that her warnings had been heard and acted upon, but the emotional intensity of her dreams continued to create an underlying sense of dread about future dangers. As the afternoon progressed, Sarah found herself committed to remaining with Charlotte despite the professional consequences that would inevitably follow her decision to abandon standard protocol. The detective's choice to prioritize the child's emotional needs over institutional expectations had created a situation that would require explanation and likely result in disciplinary action. However, as she held the princess and coordinated security investigations based on the child's observations, Sarah felt confident that her decision had been correct. Sometimes protecting the royal family required more than following established procedures. Sometimes it required recognizing the humanity behind the titles and responding to genuine need with compassion and courage. The late afternoon sun cast longer shadows through the sitting room windows as the unlikely pair continued their vigil, waiting for news about the security investigation while maintaining their emotional connection that had transcended the normal boundaries between protector and protected. In choosing to believe a frightened child's concerns and respond with both professional competence and personal warmth, Sarah had broken protocol but potentially prevented a catastrophe that conventional security measures might have missed. The Security Command Center at Windsor Castle hummed with unusual activity as Sergeant Thompson's investigation into Charlotte's observations began to yield disturbing results. Located in the castle's lower levels, the command center represented the modern face of royal protection, with banks of monitors displaying feeds from hundreds of security cameras and sophisticated computer systems tracking the movements and backgrounds of everyone with access to the royal residences. Detective Chief Inspector David Harrison, Sarah's supervisor, arrived at the command center within 30 minutes of Thompson's initial report. At 58, Harrison possessed 35 years of experience in royal protection and had personally overseen security during some of the most challenging periods in recent royal history. His weathered face and penetrating gray eyes reflected the accumulated wisdom of decades spent anticipating and preventing threats to the monarchy. "What exactly are we dealing with?" Harrison asked as he reviewed the preliminary findings displayed on the main screen. Thompson pulled up personnel files on his computer terminal, his expression growing more concerned as he shared the initial investigation results. "Sir, we've identified the individual described by Princess Charlotte. His name is Marcus Webb, hired 6 weeks ago as temporary kitchen staff for the autumn season. His background check appeared clean initially, but deeper investigation reveals some troubling discrepancies." Harrison leaned in to examine Webb's file more closely. The photograph showed a tall man with dark hair and unremarkable features, exactly matching Charlotte's description. However, the background information contained subtle inconsistencies that had apparently escaped notice during the standard hiring process. "What kind of discrepancies?" Harrison inquired, his professional instincts already suggesting that they might be dealing with a sophisticated infiltration attempt. "His employment history shows a gap of 18 months that's explained as freelance catering work, but we can't verify any of the companies he claims to have worked for during that period," Thompson explained. "Additionally, his references all trace back to recently established businesses with minimal operational history." Harrison's expression darkened as he processed this information. Gaps in employment history combined with unverifiable references represented classic signs of identity fabrication, particularly when the individual had gained access to sensitive areas of royal residences. "Has Webb been located for questioning?" Harrison asked. "That's where things become more concerning, sir. Webb didn't report for his scheduled shift this afternoon, and he hasn't responded to attempts to contact him. His listed address appears to be a vacant apartment that's been empty for over 3 months." The implications of this discovery sent ripples of alarm through the command center. An individual with fabricated credentials and a false address who had suddenly disappeared after gaining access to food service areas represented exactly the type of threat that kept royal protection officers awake at night. Meanwhile, in the blue drawing room, Charles and Camilla remained unaware of the security investigation that their granddaughter's observations had triggered. Their conversation had evolved from discussing Charlotte's dreams to broader concerns about the psychological pressures faced by young members of the royal family. Perhaps we've been underestimating the impact of recent events on Charlotte's emotional well-being, Camilla suggested. The increased media attention following the coronation, combined with the natural pressures of growing up in the public eye, might be creating anxieties that manifest in her dreams. Charles nodded thoughtfully. His own childhood had been marked by similar pressures, and he retained vivid memories of the ways that royal responsibilities could weigh heavily on young minds. However, something about Charlotte's recent behavior suggested influences beyond normal developmental stress. "I've been thinking about your description of the dreams," he said, slowly. "The fact that both you and Charlotte are experiencing similar imagery suggests either an extraordinary psychological connection or some external factor that's affecting both of you subconsciously." Camilla shifted uncomfortably in her chair as she considered this possibility. "Charles, what if we're both sensing something real? Not supernatural, but some actual threat or danger that our conscious minds haven't fully recognized?" Before Charles could respond, a discreet knock on the drawing room door interrupted their conversation. Inspector Harrison entered with the measured steps of a man bearing significant news, his expression carefully controlled to avoid causing unnecessary alarm while conveying the seriousness of the situation. "Your Majesties, I apologize for the interruption, but we have a security matter that requires your immediate attention," Harrison announced with the formal precision that characterized all royal security briefings. Charles immediately recognized the tone and demeanor that indicated a genuine threat rather than a routine security update. "Please proceed, Inspector." "We've been investigating concerns raised about recent kitchen staff additions, and we've discovered evidence of potential infiltration by an individual with falsified credentials who has now disappeared from his assigned position." A blood drained from Camilla's face as the implications of Harrison's report aligned perfectly with her dream-induced fears. The Queen Consort gripped the arms of her chair as she struggled to process the reality that her nocturnal anxieties might have been based on subconsciously detected dangers. "Are you saying that someone with malicious intent has been working in our kitchen?" Charles asked, his voice carrying the controlled alarm of a man accustomed to receiving serious security briefings. "That appears to be a strong possibility, Your Majesty. The individual in question gained access to food preparation areas and had opportunity to observe family routines and meal schedules. We're treating this as a credible threat and implementing enhanced security protocols immediately." Camilla found her voice despite her shock. "Inspector, who raised these initial concerns about the kitchen staff?" Harrison paused briefly, recognizing that his answer would reveal the unprecedented circumstances that had led to this discovery. "The concerns were brought to our attention by Princess Charlotte, who made observations about suspicious behavior that prompted our investigation." Charles and Camilla exchanged meaningful glances as they realized that their granddaughter's inexplicable fears might have been based on genuine perception rather than childhood imagination. The 8-year-old princess had apparently detected a real threat that had escaped the notice of experienced security professionals. "Where is Charlotte now?" Charles asked, his grandfather's protective instincts engaging alongside his concerns as a monarch. "Princess Charlotte is currently with Detective Chief Inspector Matthews in the East Wing. DCI Matthews has been providing support and ensuring the princess's safety while we conduct our investigation." Back in the sitting room, Sarah maintained her vigil with Charlotte, though both were now aware that the security investigation had confirmed the validity of the princess's concerns. The radio communications had kept them informed of the search for Marcus Webb and the enhanced security measures being implemented throughout the castle. "They haven't found him yet, have they?" Charlotte asked, her intuitive understanding of the situation proving remarkably accurate despite her young age. "Not yet," Sarah confirmed gently, "but we have many people looking for him, and we've made sure that he can't get near you or your family. You're safe, and we're keeping everyone protected." Charlotte nodded solemnly, but her anxiety about Camilla's safety remained elevated. In my dreams, the bad thing hasn't happened yet. It feels like it's still coming, and I don't know how to stop it. Sarah recognized that Charlotte's ongoing distress stemmed not just from knowledge of a current threat, but from a persistent sense that danger remained imminent. While the security team had responded appropriately to the known threat, the princess seemed to sense additional dangers that hadn't yet been identified. "Charlotte, I need you to think very carefully about your dreams and anything else you might have noticed," Sarah said, recognizing that the child's observations had already proven invaluable. Even small details that might seem unimportant could help us keep everyone safe. The princess closed her eyes, concentrating on the dream images that continued to feel overwhelmingly real. There's more than one person involved. The man in the kitchen was just part of it. There are other people who seem like they belong here, but they're working together to hurt Grandmama Camilla. This revelation sent a chill through Sarah's consciousness as she realized that they might be dealing with a coordinated threat involving multiple individuals rather than a lone actor. The possibility of a conspiracy involving trusted insiders represented one of the most challenging scenarios for Royal Protection Services. "Can you remember any other details about these other people?" Sarah asked, her protective instincts now operating at maximum intensity. "One of them is someone who brings tea and coffee to the family rooms. In my dreams, they keep offering Grandmama Camilla drinks, and every time she accepts, I feel this terrible fear. But I can't see their face clearly." Sarah's radio crackled with an urgent communication from the command center. "All units, be advised that we're expanding our investigation to include all catering and beverage service personnel. Enhanced screening protocols are now in effect for all food and drink service to royal family members." Charlotte listened to this announcement with a mixture of relief and continued anxiety. "They're listening to what I told you, but I still feel like something bad is going to happen today. The feeling from my dreams is getting stronger, not weaker." Sarah found herself in the extraordinary position of coordinating security operations based on a child's intuitive fears while simultaneously providing emotional support to that same child. The detective's professional experience told her that Charlotte's concerns should be taken seriously, even when they couldn't be immediately verified through conventional investigation methods. "Charlotte, I need you to promise me something," Sarah said, maintaining eye contact with the princess. "If you see anyone today who makes you feel the same kind of fear you feel in your dreams, I want you to tell me immediately, even if it's someone who's supposed to be trustworthy." "I promise," Charlotte replied with the solemnity of someone much older than her 8 years. "But what if the person who wants to hurt Grandmama Camilla is someone we're supposed to trust completely? What if it's someone who's supposed to protect her?" This question struck at the heart of Sarah's deepest professional fears. The possibility that a threat might come from within the protection services themselves represented a nightmare scenario that required constant vigilance and careful monitoring of all personnel with access to royal family members. Before Sarah could respond, her radio erupted with urgent communications from multiple units throughout the castle. Marcus Webb had been located attempting to re-enter the castle through a service entrance, carrying items that immediately attracted security attention. "All units, suspect Marcus Webb is in custody at Service Gate 3, announced Harrison's voice through the radio system. "Recovery team has secured suspicious materials that appear to include chemical substances. EOD is being called to examine potential toxins." Charlotte's grip on Sarah's hand tightened as she heard this update. "They caught the man from the kitchen, but that's not the end of it. In my dreams, catching him makes the other people more desperate and more dangerous." Sarah's professional alarm system reached maximum alert as she processed Charlotte's warning. If the princess was correct about multiple conspirators, then Webb's capture might indeed prompt accelerated action by other members of a plot rather than eliminating the threat entirely. "Control. This is Matthews," Sarah spoke urgently into her radio. "Princess Charlotte believes there may be additional conspirators who might escalate their plans following Webb's capture. Recommend immediate security enhancement for all family members, particularly the Queen Consort," acknowledged Matthews. "Enhanced protection protocols are being implemented immediately." As security operations intensified throughout the castle, Sarah maintained her protective position with Charlotte, recognizing that the child's intuitive warnings had already proven remarkably accurate. The detective found herself relying on an 8-year-old's dreams and fears to guide professional security decisions. A situation that would have seemed absurd under normal circumstances but that felt entirely appropriate given the accuracy of Charlotte's previous observations. The afternoon light was beginning to fade as the security crisis continued to unfold, with Charlotte's persistent anxiety about Camilla's safety serving as an ongoing reminder that the danger might not have passed despite Webb's capture. The princess's ability to sense threats through some combination of observation and intuition had already proven invaluable, and Sarah was determined to continue taking the child's concerns seriously, regardless of how unusual the circumstances might appear to outside observers. In choosing to believe Charlotte's warnings and respond with both professional competence and personal protection, Sarah had broken numerous protocols but potentially prevented a catastrophic attack on the royal family. As they waited for additional security updates, both the detective and the princess remained vigilant, knowing that their unique partnership had already saved lives and might need to do so again before the crisis was fully resolved. The bond that had formed between them transcended normal professional relationships, creating a connection based on mutual trust and shared commitment to protecting the people they both cared about. In a world governed by strict protocols and formal procedures, their collaboration represented the power of human intuition and compassion to overcome institutional limitations and respond to genuine threats with courage and effectiveness. As evening approached, and the security investigation continued, Charlotte's dreams and Sarah's professional instincts remained aligned in their assessment that significant danger still threatened the royal family. The capture of Marcus Webb had confirmed the reality of the threat, but both the princess and her protectors sensed that the most dangerous phase of the conspiracy remained ahead of them, requiring continued vigilance and unwavering commitment to keeping Camilla and the entire family safe from harm. The interrogation room in Windsor Castle's security wing had been designed to blend the necessity of law enforcement procedures with the dignity appropriate to a royal residence. Marcus Webb sat across from Detective Inspector Harrison and Counterintelligence Officer Rebecca Sterling, his earlier confident demeanor replaced by the nervous energy of someone whose carefully constructed facade had crumbled under professional scrutiny. Webb's appearance had changed dramatically since his photograph was taken for his employment file 6 weeks earlier. The friendly, unremarkable kitchen worker had been replaced by a man whose eyes darted constantly around the room, looking for escape routes that didn't exist. His hands trembled slightly as he maintained his silence despite repeated attempts by his interrogators to extract information about his mission and potential accomplices. "Marcus, we've already confirmed that your entire identity was fabricated," Harrison said calmly, spreading Webb's falsified documents across the table. "Your employment history, your references, your address, all of it was constructed specifically to gain access to this facility. What we need to understand is who helped you create this identity and what you were planning to do with your access to the royal kitchen." Webb's silence stretched on for several more minutes before he finally spoke, his voice carrying the flat affect of someone who had resigned himself to capture. "I don't know what you're talking about. I was hired to work in the kitchen. I've done nothing wrong." Officer Sterling leaned forward, her expression reflecting the patient determination of someone experienced in extracting information from uncooperative subjects. "The chemical analysis of the substances you are carrying shows traces of several compounds that have no legitimate culinary applications. These substances, when combined in specific proportions, create toxins that would be virtually undetectable in food or beverages." This revelation caused Webb's composure to crack slightly, his eyes widening before he could control his reaction. The confirmation that he had been carrying potential poisons validated Charlotte's dream-based fears about threats to Camilla's food and drink. "We also know that you're not working alone," Harrison continued, observing Webb's micro-expressions for any signs of additional information. "Our investigation has revealed communications between you and at least 2 other individuals with access to the castle. We can protect you from retaliation if you cooperate with our investigation." Meanwhile, in the blue drawing room, Charles and Camilla waited for security updates while processing the reality that their granddaughter's inexplicable fears had been based on a genuine assassination plot. The weight of this knowledge hung heavily between them, creating an atmosphere of tension that neither royal ceremony nor personal composure could entirely dispel. "I keep thinking about Charlotte's dreams and how specifically they warned about threats to food and beverages," Camilla said quietly, her voice reflecting a mixture of gratitude and lingering fear. If we had dismissed her concerns as childhood imagination, the consequences could have been catastrophic. Charles nodded grimly, his own thoughts focused on the broader security implications of the discovered plot. What troubles me most is the sophistication required to create Webb's false identity and gain access to our kitchen. This wasn't the work of an amateur or a lone individual with a grievance. This represents organized, professional-level planning. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Inspector Harrison, who entered with the measured steps of someone bearing news that was both reassuring and deeply concerning. His expression suggested that significant progress had been made in the investigation, but that serious questions remained unanswered. "Your Majesties, we've made substantial progress in our investigation," Harrison began, settling into a chair across from the royal couple. "Webb has confirmed that he was planning to introduce toxins into beverages intended for Your Majesty," he said, directing his attention to Camilla. However, he continues to refuse to identify his accomplices or provide details about the broader conspiracy. Camilla felt a chill run through her as the reality of how close she had come to assassination began to sink in. The specificity of the threat confirmed that Charlotte's dreams had somehow detected not just a general danger, but the exact method that would have been used against her. "Do we have any information about when this attack was planned to occur?" Charles asked, his voice carrying the controlled tension of someone processing a direct threat to his family. "Based on the materials Webb was carrying and his movement patterns over the past week, we believe the attempt would have been made within the next 24 to 48 hours, Harrison replied. "The timing suggests coordination with your scheduled appearances and meal times." This information prompted both Charles and Camilla to consider how their normal routines and public schedules could have been monitored and used against them. The realization that their predictable patterns had been studied and exploited by hostile forces represented a fundamental violation of the security that they had always taken for granted. Back in the East Wing sitting room, Sarah and Charlotte continued their vigil, as radio communications kept them informed of the ongoing investigation. The princess's anxiety had decreased somewhat following Webb's capture, but her persistent sense of impending danger suggested that significant threats remained unresolved. "The feeling from my dreams is changing," Charlotte explained to Sarah as evening shadows lengthened across the room. "Instead of feeling like something bad is going to happen, now it feels like something bad is happening right now, somewhere else in the castle." Sarah's protective instincts immediately engaged as she processed Charlotte's warning. The child's previous observations had proven remarkably accurate, and dismissing her continuing concerns would be both foolish and potentially dangerous. "Can you tell me anything specific about what you're sensing?" Sarah asked gently, maintaining her supportive hold on Charlotte while engaging her analytical capabilities. Charlotte closed her eyes, concentrating on the subtle emotional impressions that seemed to flow through her consciousness like an invisible current. "It's not in the kitchen anymore. It's somewhere with books and comfortable chairs, where people go to have quiet conversations." This description immediately brought the castle's library to Sarah's mind. The library served as both a working space for royal family members and a location for informal meetings and private conversations. If conspirators remained active within the castle, the library would provide an ideal location for coordinating plans or passing information. "Charlotte, I need you to stay here with Miss Hartwell while I coordinate with my team to check the library and other quiet meeting areas," Sarah said, recognizing that she needed to act on the princess's warning while ensuring Charlotte's continued safety. "No!" Charlotte exclaimed, her panic immediately returning. "Please, don't leave me. In my dreams, when people split up, that's when the bad things happen. We need to stay together." Sarah found herself torn between her duty to investigate potential threats and her commitment to protecting Charlotte's emotional well-being. The child's distress was genuine and intense, but her warning about the library could indicate immediate danger to other royal family members or staff. "What if we compromise?" Sarah suggested. "I'll call for additional security to investigate the library while we remain together here. That way, we can respond to your concerns without separating." Charlotte considered this proposal carefully before nodding her agreement. "But can we listen to what they find? I need to know if the bad feeling goes away or gets stronger." Sarah activated her radio and called for immediate security sweeps of the castle's library and all surrounding quiet meeting areas. Her request was treated with appropriate urgency, given the ongoing security crisis and her role in identifying the initial threats. All units, this is Matthews requesting immediate security sweep of the main library and adjacent reading areas. We have reason to believe that additional conspirators may be using these locations for coordination or communication. The response came quickly from multiple units converging on the library complex. Copy, Matthews. Teams are moving to library now. We'll report findings immediately. As they waited for the library investigation results, Sarah noticed that Charlotte's demeanor had begun to change again. The princess appeared to be listening to something that only she could hear, her expression shifting between concentration and growing alarm. "The feeling is getting much stronger," Charlotte whispered urgently. "Something is happening right now. Someone is making a terrible decision, and it's going to hurt people we care about." Before Sarah could respond, her radio erupted with urgent communications from the library investigation team. "Control, this is Team 3 at the main library. We've discovered evidence of recent clandestine meeting, documents, communication equipment, and what appears to be detailed floor plans of the royal family's private quarters." Charlotte's grip on Sarah's hand tightened as this discovery confirmed her intuitive warnings. That's where they were planning the next part of their attack. But they're not there anymore. They've moved to where they plan to hurt Grandmama Camilla. Sarah's professional alarm reached maximum intensity as she realized that while they had been focusing on the kitchen infiltration and Webb's capture, the broader conspiracy had continued to advance its plans through alternative methods and locations. "Charlotte, I need you to focus very carefully on what you're feeling right now," Sarah said urgently. "Can you sense where the danger is moving to?" The princess closed her eyes again, her young face displaying concentration beyond her years as she tried to interpret the emotional impressions that seemed to flow through her consciousness. "It's moving toward where Grandmama Camilla is right now. But it's not coming from outside. It's coming from someone who's supposed to be protecting her." This warning sent ice through Sarah's veins as she realized that Charlotte might be detecting an imminent betrayal by someone within the Royal Protection Services. The possibility that a member of the security team itself might be involved in the conspiracy represented the most dangerous scenario imaginable. "Control, this is Matthews with Priority 1 emergency." Sarah spoke rapidly into her radio. "Princess Charlotte is indicating imminent threat to the Queen Consort from potential insider involvement. Request immediate security verification for all personnel with current access to Her Majesty." The radio response reflected the professional alarm appropriate for such a warning. "Acknowledged, Matthews. Implementing immediate protection protocols and personnel verification. All units report positions and status immediately." As security teams throughout the castle responded to the emergency alert, Charlotte's anxiety continued to escalate, her young body trembling with the intensity of her emotional perceptions. "It's happening now," she whispered to Sarah. "Someone is with Grandmama Camilla right now. Someone she trusts, but they're not who they seem to be." Sarah made an immediate decision that would further violate protocol, but that her protective instincts demanded. "We're going to them," she told Charlotte firmly. "We're going to make sure your step-grandmother is safe." Together they left the sitting room and began moving rapidly through the castle corridors toward the blue drawing room, where Camilla and Charles were receiving their security briefing. Sarah's radio crackled with ongoing communications as security teams verified personnel locations and investigated potential insider threats. "All units be advised that we're implementing Code Red protocols," announced Harrison's voice through the radio system. "Assume potential insider threat until personnel verification is complete." As they hurried through the corridors, Charlotte's distress continued to escalate, her warnings becoming more urgent and specific. "The person with them right now isn't supposed to be there. They're pretending to bring important news, but they're really bringing something that will hurt Grandmama Camilla." Sarah's protective instincts drove her forward despite the professional risks of abandoning her assigned position and bringing a royal family member into a potentially dangerous situation. However, Charlotte's previous warnings had proven so accurate that ignoring her current fears seemed far more dangerous than responding to them. The corridor leading to the blue drawing room appeared normal as they approached, but Charlotte's mounting panic suggested that they were moving toward an active threat rather than away from danger. The princess's ability to sense danger through some combination of observation and intuition had already proven invaluable, and Sarah was determined to trust that ability, even when it led them directly toward potential confrontation. As they reached the final corridor before the blue drawing room, Sarah's radio erupted with alarming news from the ongoing investigation. "Control, this is Harrison. We've discovered that one of our personnel verification checks has failed. Officer Janet Morrison, assigned to Royal Family Protection, cannot be accounted for and may have assumed unauthorized access to restricted areas." Charlotte's reaction to this news was immediate and intense. "That's her. That's the person in my dreams who keeps offering drinks to Grandmama Camilla. She's with them right now." Sarah's protective instincts reached peak intensity as she realized that they were potentially approaching a confrontation with a rogue protection officer who had gained the trust of the royal family and was using that trust to implement an assassination plan. The detective's training prepared her for external threats, but the possibility of betrayal from within, the protection services created a scenario that required unprecedented courage and decisiveness. As they prepared to enter the area where Camilla and Charles were located, both Sarah and Charlotte understood that the next few minutes would determine whether the conspiracy that had infiltrated the castle would succeed in its deadly mission or be stopped by the unlikely partnership between a dedicated protection officer and a remarkably perceptive 8-year-old princess whose dreams had revealed dangers that conventional security measures had failed to detect. The corridor outside the blue drawing room maintained its usual atmosphere of quiet dignity, with afternoon light filtering through tall windows and casting familiar shadows across the Persian runners that had graced these floors for generations. However, beneath this facade of normalcy, Sarah Matthews moved with the controlled urgency of someone approaching a potentially lethal situation, her protective instincts heightened by Charlotte's increasingly desperate warnings. As they drew closer to the drawing room, Charlotte's emotional distress reached a crescendo that manifested in physical symptoms of panic. Her breathing became rapid and shallow, her small hands trembling as she gripped Sarah's arm with desperate intensity. "She's in there right now," Charlotte whispered, her voice carrying the certainty of someone witnessing events rather than merely imagining them. "The woman from my dreams is offering Grandmama Camilla something to drink, and Grandmama thinks she's being helpful and kind." Sarah's radio crackled with urgent updates from the security investigation that confirmed Charlotte's warnings with terrifying accuracy. "All units, Officer Janet Morrison has been located in the blue drawing room with their majesties. She was not assigned to that location and appears to be carrying beverages that were not requested through normal service protocols." The detective's blood ran cold as she realized that they were potentially seconds away from witnessing an assassination attempt by a trusted member of the Royal Protection Service. Morrison's presence in the drawing room with unauthorized beverages matched Charlotte's dream warnings with precision that defied rational explanation. "Control, this is Matthews approaching the blue drawing room." Sarah spoke urgently into her radio. "Princess Charlotte and I are in immediate proximity. Recommend extreme caution and immediate intervention." "Negative, Matthews," came Harrison's voice through the radio. "Maintain distance and await backup. Do not approach potentially hostile situation with a royal family member in tow." Sarah faced an impossible choice between following direct orders from her supervisor and responding to her protective instincts that demanded immediate action. Charlotte's grip on her arm tightened as the princess sensed the critical nature of the moment. "We can't wait," Charlotte said with remarkable composure for someone in the grip of panic. "In my dreams, waiting is what allows the bad thing to happen. We have to act now, or we'll be too late." The 8-year-old certainty cut through Sarah's professional conditioning and activated her deepest protective instincts. In 15 years of royal service, she had never faced a situation where a child's intuitive warnings carried more weight than established protocol. But Charlotte's track record of accuracy made her fears impossible to dismiss. "Stay directly behind me," Sarah instructed Charlotte as she approached the drawing room door. "No matter what happens, don't enter the room until I signal that it's safe." Inside the blue drawing room, Camilla and Charles continued their conversation with Inspector Harrison about the ongoing security investigation, unaware that the most immediate threat to their safety was standing just a few feet away, disguised as a helpful member of their protection detail. Officer Janet Morrison had served in royal protection for 8 years, building a reputation for reliability and discretion that had earned her access to the most sensitive areas of royal residences. Her personnel file contained commendations from senior officials and glowing reviews from royal family members who appreciated her unobtrusive professionalism. However, the woman who stood in the blue drawing room that afternoon bore little resemblance to the dedicated officer described in those official records. Morrison's usually steady hands betrayed slight tremors as she approached Camilla with a silver tray bearing delicate china cups filled with what appeared to be perfectly normal afternoon tea. "Your Majesty, I thought you might appreciate some refreshment during this difficult discussion," Morrison said, her voice carrying its usual tone of respectful helpfulness, despite the deadly intentions that lurked beneath her professional facade. Camilla looked up gratefully at the offered beverage, her stress from the day's revelations making the prospect of soothing tea particularly welcome. "How thoughtful of you, Officer Morrison. This has indeed been a rather trying afternoon." As Camilla reached toward the teacup, time seemed to slow for Charlotte, who pressed her face against the door's window and watched the scene unfold exactly as her dreams had predicted. The princess's emotional connection to her step-grandmother created an almost physical sensation of impending catastrophe that compelled her to act despite Sarah's instructions to remain hidden. "Grandmama Camilla, don't drink that." Charlotte burst through the door, her voice carrying the desperate urgency of someone trying to prevent an irreversible tragedy. The sudden appearance of the princess in the drawing room created immediate chaos, as multiple people reacted simultaneously to the unexpected interruption. Morrison's carefully controlled facade cracked as she realized that her plan had been discovered, while Camilla froze with the teacup halfway to her lips, confused by Charlotte's dramatic entrance. Sarah followed Charlotte into the room, her protective instincts overriding all other considerations as she assessed the threat posed by Morrison's presence and the potentially poisoned beverages. The detective's training allowed her to process multiple elements of the situation simultaneously: Morrison's guilty expression, the unauthorized tea service, and Charlotte's terror-stricken face. "Step away from the Queen Consort," Sarah commanded Morrison, her voice carrying the authority of someone prepared to use whatever force necessary to protect the royal family. Morrison's professional mask completely dissolved as she realized that her carefully planned operation had been compromised by an 8-year-old's intuitive warnings. Her hand moved toward the radio on her belt, potentially to signal accomplices or trigger backup plans that the investigation had not yet uncovered. "Don't move," Sarah ordered, drawing her weapon with practiced efficiency while positioning herself between Morrison and the royal family. "Place your hands where I can see them, and step away from the refreshments." The tension in the room reached breaking point as Morrison calculated her options, her eyes darting between the drawn weapon, the royal family members, and the potential escape routes that were rapidly being blocked by arriving security personnel. Charles, who had remained remarkably composed throughout the crisis, spoke with the calm authority of someone accustomed to managing dangerous situations. "Officer Morrison, I suggest you cooperate fully with Detective Chief Inspector Matthews. Whatever grievances or motivations have brought you to this point, your actions today have crossed lines that cannot be uncrossed." Charlotte remained pressed against Sarah's side, her young face reflecting both terror and relief as she watched the threat to her beloved step-grandmother being neutralized. The princess's dreams had prepared her for this moment, but experiencing it in reality carried an emotional intensity that threatened to overwhelm her young consciousness. "The teacups!" Charlotte said urgently to the assembled adults. "In my dreams, there are different things in different cups. One is safe, but the others will hurt anyone who drinks them." Sarah immediately directed additional security personnel to secure the tea service for forensic analysis while maintaining her weapon trained on Morrison, who had begun to exhibit the resigned behavior of someone whose elaborate plan had been thoroughly defeated. "I want to understand what happened here," Camilla said, her voice steady despite the traumatic realization that she had come within moments of drinking poisoned tea. "How did an 8-year-old child detect a threat that our security systems missed?" Inspector Harrison, who had arrived with backup personnel, looked toward Charlotte with a mixture of professional confusion and genuine admiration. "Your Royal Highness, your observations and warnings have prevented what could have been a catastrophic attack on your family." Your courage in sharing your concerns, even when they seemed unusual, may have saved lives today. Charlotte looked up at the assembled adults, her young face reflecting the weight of responsibility that her unique abilities had placed upon her shoulders. I just knew that something bad was going to happen, and I couldn't let it happen to people I love. Sarah maintained her protective position near Charlotte while coordinating with other security personnel to fully secure Morrison and investigate the extent of the conspiracy. The detective's decision to abandon protocol and trust a child's intuitive warnings had proven to be the critical factor in preventing an assassination that conventional security measures had failed to detect. Officer Morrison, Harrison addressed the detained conspirator formally. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, infiltration of royal security, and treason against the crown. You have the right to remain silent, but anything you say may be used in evidence against you. Morrison's response came in a voice drained of emotion and hope. You have no idea how extensive this operation is. Arresting me and Webb won't stop what's coming. There are others, people in positions you trust completely, and they won't give up just because we failed today. This revelation sent ripples of alarm through the assembled security personnel as they realized that the day's discoveries might represent only the beginning of a much larger conspiracy, involving multiple levels of infiltration within royal protection services. Charles and Camilla exchanged glances that reflected both relief at their immediate safety and concern about the broader implications of Morrison's warning. The existence of additional conspirators meant that their security could not be considered fully restored, despite the day's apparent successes. Charlotte, who had been listening intently to Morrison's statements, tugged gently on Sarah's sleeve to gain the detective's attention. She's telling the truth about there being other people involved, but she's wrong about them not giving up. In my dreams, after this part happens, the other bad people become scared and they make mistakes that help the good people catch them. Sarah looked down at Charlotte with growing appreciation for the child's remarkable abilities, recognizing that the princess's insights had already proven more valuable than conventional intelligence-gathering methods. Can you tell us anything else about these other people? Sarah asked gently, mindful of the emotional toll that the day's events had taken on Charlotte, while recognizing the potential value of any additional information she might provide. Charlotte closed her eyes briefly, accessing the dream imagery that had guided her throughout this crisis. There are 3 more people, and they work in different places around the castle. One of them takes care of the cars, one works with the computers that watch the doors, and one is someone who brings messages to important people. This information immediately focused the investigation on specific areas of potential vulnerability: transportation services, electronic security systems, and communications personnel. Harrison began coordinating expanded background checks and surveillance of personnel in these critical areas. As the immediate crisis subsided and additional security measures were implemented, Sarah found herself reflecting on the extraordinary events that had unfolded over the past few hours. Her decision to comfort a frightened child rather than maintain professional distance had led to the discovery of a sophisticated assassination plot that might otherwise have succeeded. Charlotte remained close to Sarah's side as they all gradually processed the magnitude of what had been prevented and what still needed to be investigated. The princess's unique ability to perceive threats through dreams and intuition had proven more effective than conventional security protocols, raising profound questions about the nature of protection and the value of human connection in an increasingly technological world. Detective Chief Inspector Matthews, Charles addressed Sarah formally, his voice carrying deep gratitude alongside official recognition. Your decision to listen to my granddaughter's concerns and respond with both professional competence and personal compassion has prevented a tragedy that could have devastated our family. While your methods may have violated established protocols, your judgment and courage have proven exemplary. Sarah felt the weight of royal acknowledgement, alongside the warmth of Charlotte's continued trust in her protection. The detective had chosen humanity over hierarchy, and that choice had saved lives while forging a bond that transcended normal boundaries between protector and protected. As evening settled over Windsor Castle and enhanced security measures continued to be implemented, the unlikely partnership between a dedicated protection officer and a remarkably perceptive 8-year-old princess had proven that sometimes the most effective security comes not from sophisticated technology or rigid protocols, but from the courage to listen, to believe, and to act when human instinct